Did you know that 10% of homeowners that live in an HOA governed community are thinking about selling? Well, I didn't either, so stick around and we're going to talk about it. So 27% of homeowners in the United States live in an HOA governed community. That number is only going to continue to grow because currently 60% of all newly constructed single family residences are being built within an HOA governed community. So California is the leading state with the most amount of homes being governed by an HOA. And that number is just under 5 million homes. Florida is coming in a close second with just under 4 million homes belonging to an HOA governed community. So a recent study conducted by Rocket Mortgage, there was 1,000 participants in this study, and they interviewed residents that live within communities that are governed by an HOA as well as members of the board of HOAs. And believe it or not, more than 50% of the homeowners said that they were not currently happy with their HOA. So me personally, I have like a love-hate relationship with an HOA. You can see behind me, but this is the community that I actually live in, and it is an HOA governed community. And as you can see, it's an absolutely beautiful community, but the fees continue to increase year over year. And in addition to that, it seems like the relationship with the HOA is one-sided. So all the residents have their feet to the fire as far as having to abide by the rules, regulations, covenants, whatever you want to call it within the HOA. But when it comes to the HOA, there's no really, I feel, accountability from their perspective. So if there's something that you want them to do, it's basically up to them if they choose to do it or not. But yet every single month you're responsible for making your payment to them. But if you ask them to do something, they have the ability to choose whether or not they want to do it. And I'm not saying ask them to do something that is not something that they're supposed to already be doing. It's if you ask them to do it outside of maybe the normal time that they're supposed to be doing it. Say your yard needs to be sprayed, for instance. Well, if they do that 2 times a year, and for whatever reason your yard happens to need it in between, you have been paying your monthly fee every single month, and it's something that needs to be done. And if you go to them and ask them to do it, then they get to make the decision whether or not they want to do it. But yet I didn't get to make the decision whether or not I wanted to pay my monthly fee. Now, it wouldn't be fair to just talk about all the things that, I don't love about being in an HOA, because there are some things that I do love about being in an HOA. For one, it holds, your neighbors accountable. You don't have to worry about your neighbors having a junkyard. You don't have to worry about your neighbor's lawn being 12 inches tall. You don't ever have to worry about them painting their house purple, say, for example. So I do love that perspective that it does keep everyone within the community accountable to an extent, because after all, things like that, if they get out of control, affects the neighborhood and it affects the value. And so there does need to be some sort of oversight to keep that from happening. But in my personal opinion, I feel like an HOA does go overboard at times with their rules, regulations, and covenants. I will give you a perfect example of when I think the HOA goes over and beyond with their rules, regulations, and covenants. So Halloween, I decided to put out my 12-foot skeleton. Everyone in the neighborhood absolutely loved the skeleton. And they would stop by and say, hey, will you take our picture with the skeleton? Or I just wanted to let you know my grandkid is coming by every single night. And, he's wanting to take a look at the skeleton and he just loves it. And we're so grateful that you put it out. Well, that was the neighbor's perspective. The HOA had a little different perspective. So they sent me a lovely letter in the mail and told me that I had 2 weeks to take down my skeleton or they were gonna start fining me. And the reason why they were gonna fine me is because my skeleton was in my yard, and because part of my HOA is for my yard to be mowed, they felt like it would impede the lawn company from being able to mow my yard. So I was telling my neighbor about the situation, and my neighbor said, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll mow your yard. And mind you, the month of October that they sent this lovely little letter to my mailbox, they had already sent us a letter out previously stating that in the month of October, they were only going to mow our yard one time that month. So in reality, the only time that my skeleton would have impeded the lawn company would have been that 1 month, or that 1 week, I'm sorry. So I went to the HOA and I said, listen, I will be responsible for mowing my own yard for that week. As a matter of fact, my neighbor volunteered and said that he would do it because everybody in the community loves the skeleton. Nope. They said you have to take it down or you have to move it into your plant bed so that it cannot impede the lawn company from doing their job. Well, take one guess at what we did. We had no choice but to move the skeleton into one of our plant beds, and we left it out, and November 1st, we ended up taking it down, packing it away. But I just have to be honest with you, that one little situation was enough for me to where I said, you know what? I think I would rather save my $400 a month that I pay the HOA every month and move somewhere outside of a community with an HOA and apply that additional $400 a month to my mortgage and then just pay off my mortgage somewhere else sooner than pay an HOA $400 a month and then dictate to me whether or not I can have a 12-foot skeleton in my yard for Halloween. So that's just my personal experience, and it rubbed me the wrong way. And for that reason, I am one of those 10% of homeowners that is not happy with a homeowners association. And I will be selling my house and moving outside of a community without an HOA because I want to be in control of my own situation and make decisions for myself and my family. And I don't want an HOA telling me what I can and can't do. So just personal perspective. A lot of people love an HOA. And I'm not here to say that I don't love it. Like I said earlier in the video, there are things that I do love about it. I just think that they have way too much power. And I think that they don't ever take certain situations into account and maybe allow for rules to be bent a little, especially around the holidays. So something to think about if you're going to move into a community with an HOA. So in addition to the HOA dictating what holiday decorations you can have out and what size they can be and where they need to be placed, there's a few other things that HOAs can dictate to you. And I'm just going to go over a few because I've lived in several different HOAs. And mind you, some are much stricter about following the rules than others. But just off the top of my head, pets, they can dictate to you what pets you can have and how many pets you can have. If you have dogs, they can tell you what breed of dogs you can have and what breed you can't have. They can tell you how many cars can be parked in your driveway. They can tell you that no cars can be parked overnight on the street. They can tell you that your roof needs to be cleaned. They can tell you whether or not you can have a fence in your backyard or not. For example, if you see back here, I can't have a fence where I live because I back up to water, and any house in my neighborhood that backs up to water is not allowed to have a fence. Now, why that is, I have no idea, but it's just another rule that an HOA can dictate to you. So make sure that if you do decide to move into a community with an HOA, that you really take the time to read what the rules, the regulations, the covenants, what they are, because I'm going to just tell you, if you move into one that really follows their rules to the T, it can really be a pain because you're going to constantly be getting letters in your mailbox. An example, my neighbor across the street was walking her dog the other day, and she stopped with me to chat for a minute, and she said, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" And she said, "I got a letter in the mail. Somebody actually drove by, took a picture that my trash can was sitting outside of my garage door, and they sent it into the HOA, and the HOA sent me a letter and said, you know, your trash can has to be pulled in by, 6 p.m. the day of trash pickup." Well, the reason why our trash can was sitting outside is because something in it was I don't know, rotten or smelling, and she didn't want to put it into her garage, and so she left it outside with the lid open until the smell went away so that she could properly store it back in her garage. But no, there's no excuses. The rule is by 6 p.m. the trash can has to be back inside the garage, period. That's it. So once again, threatened her with a fine with this lovely little letter that showed up in her mailbox that if she did it again, she was going to start being fined. So just a thing to be cautious of when moving into a neighborhood with an HOA. Make sure that you read those covenants thoroughly so that you know what you're getting yourself into. So I share all of that with you just to say, buyer beware. If you're going to be moving into a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, I would highly encourage you to take the time, read thoroughly through the covenants, the bylaws, even interview the neighbors while you're in the neighborhood. Ask them, how strict is the HOA? What do you like about the HOA? What do you not like about the HOA? Are they, sending letters out, potentially fining people for petty things? Or is it actually things that have some substance that would have a real effect on the value of the neighborhood or the community, for example? Listen, buying a house is a super exciting time. And through the excitement, oftentimes what I see happen with people is they get the documents, they just sign off on them, and they actually never take the time to read them. And then they get settled into the community. And then guess what happens? They get upset because then they realize, that there's rules and that these rules are supposed to be followed, and that there's someone that's actually making sure that these rules are to be followed, and that's the HOA. So I would hate for your excitement to be taken away by having an HOA that's super strict and their expectations of you are more than what, you can handle or expect. So please read your covenants, your bylaws, interview the neighbors, and don't let the excitement of buying a house get in the way of actually reading the fine print and reading the documents, because those are going to dictate how you live for most likely several years. So make sure you are aware before you make that decision on buying the house in a community within an HOA. The last thing before I go, I just wanted to remind you, my name is Tina. I am a licensed real estate agent in the state of Florida, brokered by EXP. I'm a relocation expert. I would love to be able to assist you and your family with your relocation needs. If you think that I would be a good fit for you and your family, my information is listed below in the details. You can call me, you can shoot me a text, you can send me an email. We could set up a time where we could do a Zoom call and I could get a lot of detailed information about what you and your family's needs are. Also, if you have any comments about this video or anything that you would like to add, maybe any experience that you've had or nightmares that you've experienced with your HOA, I'd love for you to leave a comment below. And last but certainly not least, if you like this video, please hit the like button and please subscribe. It gives me the courage to continue to make these videos. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video.